Jake Morris wiped the sweat from his forehead as he guided his patrol craft through the asteroid field surrounding New Dakota Colony. The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky surface below where miners worked their shifts in the deep tunnels. Everything looked normal from up here, but Jake knew better than to trust appearances in frontier space. His communication device crackled to life with the usual chatter from the mining crews. Production reports, equipment status updates, and the occasional joke passed between work teams. Jake smiled as he listened to the familiar voices. These people had become his family over the past 3 years since he arrived on New Dakota. The colony housed about 8,000 people spread across 12 mining complexes. They extracted rare metals from the planet's core and shipped them back to Earth through the orbital station. It was honest work that paid well and gave people a chance to build something new far from the crowded cities of the inner worlds. Jake adjusted his flight path to check the perimeter sensors when something caught his eye. A bright flash appeared near the edge of the solar system. Then another, and another. His blood ran cold as he realized what he was seeing. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace. Big ships. Jake immediately activated his emergency communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. All stations, this is Lieutenant Morris. Unknown vessels detected at system edge. All mining operations cease immediately. Prepare for possible evacuation procedures. The response was instant chaos. Voices filled the communication channels as people demanded answers Jake did not have. He told them to stay calm while he gathered more information, but his own heart was racing. The scanner readings made his stomach drop. 15 massive warships formed a battle line as they approached New Dakota. These were not human vessels. The design was completely alien, with curved hulls that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Each ship was easily 10 times larger than anything in the human fleet. Jake's training kicked in as he sent an urgent message to Earth Command. The signal would take weeks to reach them, but protocol demanded he try. Then he turned his attention to the immediate threat. The alien fleet moved with precision that spoke of military discipline. They took positions around the planet that cut off all escape routes while maintaining perfect firing solutions on the orbital station. Whoever commanded these ships knew exactly what they were doing. A new voice filled Jake's communication system. The words were in perfect English but spoken with an accent he had never heard before. Human vessel, we are General Vextar of the Kethvar hegemony. You will surrender your colony immediately or face destruction. Jake took a deep breath before responding. This is Lieutenant Jake Morris of the Terran Defense Corps. New Dakota is a peaceful mining colony. We have no military installations here. What do you want from us? We want your surrender, the alien general replied. Your species has expanded into territory claimed by the hegemony. This colony will serve as an example to other human settlements. I cannot authorize any surrender, Jake said. You need to speak with our planetary governor. There was a pause before Vextar spoke again. Very well. Direct us to your military commander. Jake felt a strange calm settle over him. You are speaking to him. The silence that followed stretched for several long seconds. When Vextar finally responded, his voice carried obvious confusion. Explain yourself, human. Where is your garrison? Where are your defense platforms? Where is your fleet? There is no garrison, Jake said simply. No defense platforms. No fleet. Just me? Impossible, Vextar replied. No species maintains colonies without proper military protection. You are clearly lying to buy time for reinforcements. Jake looked down at the mining complexes below, where thousands of people were now watching the skies with growing fear. These were his people, and he was all that stood between them and whatever the aliens had planned. "I am not lying, General," Jake said. "I am the only military personnel on this planet." Another long pause filled the communication channel. Jake could almost feel the alien commander trying to process this information. In the distance, he could see smaller ships launching from the main fleet, landing craft preparing for invasion. "This makes no sense," Vextar said finally. "How do you expect to defend an entire world with no backup forces?" Jake smiled grimly as he powered up his patrol craft's weapon systems. They were designed for asteroid clearing and pirate deterrence, but they would have to do. "General, you are looking at my backup." The statement seemed to break something in the alien commander's mind. Vextar's voice rose in pitch as he demanded explanations that Jake was not prepared to give. How could one human think he could stand against an entire fleet? What kind of species sent single soldiers to guard whole planets? Jake did not answer these questions because he was too busy studying the tactical situation. The landing craft were moving toward the main mining complex where most of the colonists lived. He had perhaps 10 minutes before they reached the surface. His patrol craft was fast and maneuverable but lightly armed. Direct confrontation with the alien fleet would end quickly and badly. But Jake had spent 3 years learning every detail of this system. He knew things about New Dakota that no alien commander could possibly understand. The asteroid field where he now flew contained thousands of rocks ranging from pebbles to small moons. The miners had been working these deposits for decades and left behind a maze of tunnels and excavated chambers. More importantly, they had left behind mining charges. Lots of mining charges. Jake began flying toward the largest asteroid in the field while sending coded messages to the mining teams below. They would understand what he needed without requiring detailed explanations. These people trusted him to keep them safe, and he would not let them down. The first alien landing craft entered the atmosphere as Jake reached his destination. The asteroid, designated as Rock 7, was honeycombed with mining tunnels and contained the largest stockpile of industrial explosives in the system. If Jake could not stop the invasion with firepower, then he would have to get creative. He guided his patrol craft into the main tunnel and began connecting charges to his ship's power system. The setup was crude, but it would serve his purpose. When he was finished, Rock 7 would become the largest improvised weapon in human history. General Vextar's voice filled the communication channel again. "Human Morris, we are prepared to be reasonable. Surrender now and your people will be relocated safely to reservation worlds. Continue this foolish resistance and they will be sold as slaves." Jake finished his preparations and sealed his helmet before answering. "General, I have a counteroffer. Leave this system immediately and I will not blow up this asteroid." "You cannot be serious," Vextar replied. "One small explosive device cannot threaten our fleet." "You are right," Jake agreed. "But this is not a small explosive device." He triggered the detonation sequence and watched as Rock 7 disappeared in a brilliant flash of light. The explosion sent fragments flying in all directions while the shockwave rattled every ship in the system. Several alien landing craft were caught in the debris field and destroyed instantly. In the sudden silence that followed, Jake could hear General Vextar breathing heavily over the communication channel. The alien commander was beginning to understand that humans did not fight the way other species fought. "This is just the beginning, General," Jake said quietly. "I have a whole asteroid field full of rocks and 3 years' worth of mining charges. Your move." The explosion of Rock 7 sent shock waves through both the asteroid field and the alien fleet. General Vexitar stared at his tactical display in disbelief as debris from the destroyed asteroid continued to rain down on his ships. 3 landing craft had been completely destroyed and 2 more were badly damaged. Jake Morris guided his patrol craft through the swirling cloud of rock fragments while his mind raced through possibilities. The destruction of 1 asteroid had bought him maybe an hour before the aliens regrouped and tried again. He needed to use that time wisely. His communication device buzzed with incoming messages from the colonists below. Lisa Park, the chief engineer, was coordinating evacuation procedures, while Tom Brady, the head medic, organized emergency supplies. These people were not soldiers, but they knew how to work together when crisis struck. "Jake, this is Lisa," came the engineer's voice over a secure channel. "We have gotten most people into the deep shelters, but we need more time. Can you give us more time?" "Working on it," Jake replied as he flew toward another asteroid. This one, designated Rock 12, contained a massive stockpile of shaped charges used for precision mining. "How long to complete evacuation?" 6 hours minimum, Lisa answered. "The children and elderly need extra help getting to the safe zones." Jake felt his jaw tighten. 6 hours was an eternity in combat time. The aliens would not wait that long before trying another landing. He would have to find ways to keep them busy. His patrol craft settled into a landing bay carved deep inside Rock 12. Jake had spent countless hours exploring these tunnels during routine inspections. Now that knowledge would serve a different purpose. The mining charges stored here were designed to cut through solid rock with surgical precision. Each one could be programmed with specific timing and yield settings. Jake began connecting them in series while his mind worked through tactical problems. General Vexitar was a professional military commander with centuries of experience. The alien would not fall for the same trick twice, but Jake was not planning to repeat himself. Rock 12 sat at the edge of the shipping lane used by cargo vessels traveling to and from the orbital station. If Jake positioned his charges correctly, he could turn the entire asteroid into a massive fragmentation weapon that would block that route for hours. While he worked, Jake thought about his training back on Earth. The military had taught him conventional tactics designed for fighting other humans with similar weapons and strategies. But those lessons had also emphasized something more important: adaptability. Human soldiers were trained to think for themselves when plans fell apart. They learned to use whatever resources were available rather than waiting for proper equipment. Most importantly, they were taught that any object could become a weapon if used correctly. Jake finished placing his charges and returned to his patrol craft. As he flew back toward the main asteroid field, he activated his communication system. On a wide broadcast, "General Vexitar, this is Jake Morris. I have a question for you." The alien commander's response came quickly. "What do you want, human?" "I want to understand something," Jake said as he maneuvered between floating rocks. "Your fleet has enough firepower to glass this entire planet from orbit. Why are you bothering with landing craft?" There was a pause before Vexitar answered. "The hegemony requires living slaves, not dead worlds. We must capture your people intact." Jake smiled grimly. That limitation changed everything. The aliens could not simply destroy the colony from space because they needed the colonists alive. This meant they had to come down to the surface where Jake could reach them. "I see," Jake replied. "That does complicate things for you." He triggered the charges in Rock 12 and watched as the asteroid broke apart in a carefully controlled explosion. Instead of random debris, this detonation created a dense field of rock fragments moving at high speed directly across the shipping lane. 2. More alien landing craft flew directly into the debris field and were destroyed instantly. The remaining craft had to change course and approach from a different angle. This bought Jake another hour, but more importantly, it forced the aliens to adapt their plans. General Vextar's voice returned to the communication channel, and this time he sounded angry. "Clever human, but you cannot destroy asteroids forever. Eventually you will run out of explosives." "Maybe," Jake agreed as he flew toward his next target. "But I have been working these rocks for 3 years, General. I know exactly how many charges are stored out here." The truth was, Jake had enough mining explosives to keep this up for days if necessary. The colonists had been preparing for a major expansion of operations and had stockpiled enormous quantities of shaped charges and industrial explosives. But more importantly, Jake was learning how the aliens fought. Their ships moved in precise formations that suggested rigid tactical doctrine. Their commanders seemed to expect enemies to behave in predictable ways. This gave Jake opportunities to surprise them. Rock 15 contained the colony's main communication, relay. Jake had no intention of destroying it, but he could use its position to his advantage. The massive asteroid sat directly above the main mining complex and housed the most powerful transmitter in the system. Jake landed his patrol craft in the relay station's docking bay and began connecting mining charges to the communication equipment, not to destroy it, but to overload it. When he triggered these charges, the resulting electromagnetic pulse would temporarily blind every electronic system within 1,000 kilometers. While he worked, Jake's mind drifted back to his days in Special Forces. His unit had specialized in irregular warfare behind enemy lines. They had learned to turn the enemy's strengths against them and to find weakness in apparent advantages. The Kethvar fleet was powerful, but that power came with limitations. Large ships needed clear approach routes and stable positions to operate effectively. Precision weapons required accurate targeting data and clear lines of sight. Disciplined formations broke down when faced with chaos and unpredictability. Jake finished his preparations at the relay station and returned to his patrol craft. Through his cockpit window, he could see alien landing craft regrouping for another assault. They were being more careful now, but they were still coming. "Lisa, this is Jake," he called on the secure channel. "How much longer do you need?" 4 hours, the engineer replied. "We are moving as fast as we can, but some of the tunnels are blocked." "Understood," Jake said as he prepared to trigger his electromagnetic pulse. "Things are about to get interesting down there. Tell everyone to stay away from electronic equipment for the next few minutes." He activated the overloaded communication relay and watched as brilliant electrical discharges arced between the asteroid's surface and the nearby alien ships. Every scanner screen and targeting computer within range flickered and died as the pulse spread outward. The alien landing craft suddenly found themselves flying blind through an asteroid field while their navigation systems reset. 2 of them collided with floating rocks, while a third flew directly into the side of Rock 18. In the sudden communications blackout that followed, Jake could hear General Vextar shouting orders to his subordinates. The alien commander was discovering that humans did not fight fair when their families were threatened. Jake used the confusion to plant more charges on strategic asteroids throughout the field. Each explosion would serve a different purpose. Some would create debris barriers, while others would generate electromagnetic interference. A few would simply make loud noises to mask his movements. By the time the alien electronics came back, Online, Jake had turned the entire asteroid field into a maze of hazards and surprises. Any ship trying to reach the planet would have to navigate through carefully placed obstacles while under constant threat of attack. "General Vextar," Jake called over the restored communication channel. "I hope you are beginning to understand. Something about humans?" "What is that?" the alien commander replied through gritted teeth. "We do not need backup," Jake said as he prepared his next surprise. "Because we never stop thinking." Jake Morris had been fighting for 6 hours, and the alien fleet was no closer to landing troops on New Dakota. General Vexitar's perfect battle plan had dissolved into chaos as every attempt to reach the surface met with unexpected resistance. The asteroid field now resembled a war zone with debris clouds marking the locations of Jake's improvised weapons. 17 alien landing craft had been destroyed or damaged, and the remaining pilots were becoming increasingly reluctant to enter the maze of floating hazards. But Jake knew he could not keep this up forever. His patrol craft was running low on fuel, and his supply of mining charges was not unlimited. More importantly, he could see the alien commander adapting to his tactics. The next wave of landing craft would be better prepared. Down on the planet's surface, Lisa Park was coordinating the final stages of the evacuation. Most of the colonists had reached the deep shelters, but moving 8,000 people took time. Jake needed to buy them at least 2 more hours. His communication device crackled with a new voice. "Jake, this is Amy Stone at the research station. I have been monitoring alien communications, and I think you need to hear this." Dr. Amy Stone ran the colony's scientific research facility, where she studied the planet's geology and mineral deposits. She was also one of the smartest people Jake had ever met. If Amy had discovered something important, he needed to listen. "What do you have, Amy?" Jake asked as he guided his patrol craft toward the orbital elevator that connected the planets, surface to the space station above. "The aliens are not just attacking us," Amy replied. "They have fleets moving toward 6 other human colonies. New Dakota was supposed to be a quick victory to boost morale before the main assault." Jake felt his blood run cold. If other human worlds were under attack, then no help would be coming. The regular patrol ships that might have responded to his distress call were probably dealing with their own invasions. "There is more," Amy continued. "I have been listening to their command frequencies, and this General Vexitar is under pressure from his superiors. They expected him to capture our colony in 2 hours. Instead, he has been fighting 1 human for half a day." That information gave Jake an idea. Military commanders throughout the galaxy probably had the same weaknesses as human officers: pride, ambition, and the need to prove themselves to their superiors. If Vexitar was feeling pressure, then Jake could use that against him. The orbital elevator stretched from the planet's surface to the space station 20,000 kilometers above. It was a massive engineering project that used advanced materials to create a transportation system more efficient than rockets. It was also the largest kinetic weapon in the solar system. Jake docked his patrol craft with the elevator's maintenance platform and began studying the control systems. The elevator used electromagnetic accelerators to move cargo pods up and down the cable at tremendous speeds. With a few modifications, those same accelerators could launch projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. While he worked, Jake opened a communication channel to General Vextar. "General, I have been thinking about our situation, and I believe we can reach an agreement." "Speak human," Vextar replied immediately. The alien commander sounded tired and frustrated after hours of failed attacks. "You need to capture this colony quickly to maintain your reputation. Jake said as he reprogrammed the elevator's targeting systems. I need to protect my people until they can reach safety. Perhaps we can find a compromise. What kind of compromise? Vexatar asked suspiciously. Jake loaded a cargo pod with mining charges and debris from the destroyed asteroids. The electromagnetic accelerators would turn this improvised projectile into a weapon capable of damaging even the heavily armored alien ships. I propose single combat, Jake said calmly. Your best warrior against me. Winner takes the colony. The suggestion was so absurd that Vextar actually laughed. You cannot be serious, human. You are one being against my entire fleet. Exactly, Jake replied as he prepared to launch his improvised missile. If I lose, then your victory is assured. If I win, then you can tell your superiors that humans are too dangerous to attack without overwhelming force. Jake could hear other alien voices in the background as Vextar consulted with his subordinates. The general was clearly tempted by the offer, but also suspicious of Jake's motives. Why would you make such an offer? Vextar asked finally. Because I am tired of running, Jake lied smoothly, and because I want to show you something about human nature. He triggered the electromagnetic accelerator and watched as his improvised projectile shot up the elevator cable at incredible speed. The cargo pod reached the space station in seconds and continued toward the alien fleet with enough kinetic energy to punch through multiple ship hulls. The projectile struck one of the smaller alien vessels amidships and tore completely through the hull. The ship broke apart in a brilliant explosion that lit up the surrounding space. The remaining alien vessels immediately began evasive maneuvers as their crews realized they were under attack from an unexpected direction. That was a demonstration. General, Jake said into his communication device, I have enough cargo pods to keep this up for hours, and your ships cannot dodge forever while maintaining formation. General Vextar's response came as a furious roar. Treacherous human, you speak of single combat while launching sneak attacks. I never agreed to single combat, General, Jake replied calmly as he loaded another cargo pod. I only proposed it. You have not accepted yet. The distinction seemed to confuse the alien commander, who was clearly not used to dealing with opponents who changed tactics mid-conversation. Jake used that confusion to launch 2 more projectiles in quick succession. Both shots missed their targets but forced the alien ships to break formation and scatter across a wider area. This gave Jake more room to maneuver and made it harder for the aliens to coordinate their attacks. Down on the planet's surface, Tom Brady, the head medic, was sending status reports on the evacuation progress. Jake, we have moved 75% of the colonists to safe positions. Most of the remaining people are families with small children who need extra help. How much longer, Tom? Jake asked as he prepared another projectile. 90 minutes if everything goes smoothly, the medic replied. Maybe 2 hours if we run into problems. Jake looked at his fuel gauge and ammunition supplies. He could probably hold out for another hour with conventional tactics, but then he would be forced to get creative again. Fortunately, getting creative was something humans excelled at. The orbital station contained industrial fabrication equipment used to process raw materials from the planet below. Jake could use that equipment to manufacture more projectiles and even simple guidance systems. It would not be elegant, but it would be effective. He began moving through the station's corridors while General Vextar continued shouting demands and threats over the communication channel. The alien commander was losing control of the situation, and his subordinates were beginning to question his leadership. General Vexitar, Jake called as he reached the fabrication bay. I have another question for you. What now, human? Vexitar replied with obvious irritation. Have you ever wondered why humans spread across the galaxy so quickly? Jake asked as he began programming the fabrication equipment to produce simple kinetic projectiles. You breed like insects and have no respect for territorial boundaries, Vextar answered. Actually, it is because we adapt, Jake said as the first batch of improvised missiles rolled off the production line. Every world presents new challenges and we find new solutions. Every enemy teaches us new ways to fight. He loaded 6 projectiles into the electromagnetic accelerator and programmed them with different flight paths. When launched simultaneously, they would force the alien ships to choose between multiple threats. What are you trying to tell me, human? Vexatar asked. Jake triggered the launch sequence and watched as his improvised missiles streaked toward the alien fleet. I am trying to tell you, General, that attacking humans was a mistake. We do not just defend our worlds. We learn from every attack and become stronger. 3 of his missiles found their targets while the other 3 forced alien ships into collision courses with each other. The carefully maintained battle formation collapsed completely as individual ships struggled to avoid destruction. In the chaos that followed, Jake could hear alien commanders shouting contradictory orders while their crews fought to regain control. General Vexitar's voice rose above the others as he demanded explanations that no one could provide. This is impossible, the general said finally. How can one human cause so much damage? Jake smiled as he began preparing his next batch of missiles. General, you are about to learn that there is no such thing as just one human. The space around New Dakota erupted in brilliant flashes of light as human ships dropped out of hyperspace. Captain Ron Hayes led a small fleet of patrol vessels and cargo haulers that had responded to Jake's distress signal. They were outnumbered, 10 to 1, but they had come anyway. Jake watched from the orbital station as the new arrivals immediately began engaging the alien fleet. The human ships were smaller and faster than their opponents, but they lacked the heavy armor and powerful weapons of the Kethvar vessels. Jake, this is Ron Hayes aboard the Defiant, came a familiar voice over the communication channel. Sorry we are late to the party, but we brought some friends. Jake grinned as he recognized his old commanding officer from his Special Forces days. Ron had been the one to recommend Jake for the Colonial Defense posting 3 years ago. Now, the captain had brought every available ship in the sector to help defend New Dakota. Good to see you, Ron, Jake replied as he prepared another volley of kinetic projectiles. I have been keeping the aliens busy, but they are starting to adapt to my tactics. We can see that, Ron said with obvious admiration in his voice. Half their fleet is scattered across the system, and the other half looks like it has been through a blender. What have you been doing up there? Improvising, Jake answered as he launched 6 more missiles toward the alien formation. These Kethavar fight like they expect their enemies to follow rules. I have been making up new rules as I go. The human fleet spread out across the battlefield using tactics that would have seemed chaotic to any alien observer. Instead of maintaining rigid formations, the ships moved independently while coordinating through rapid communication exchanges. Each captain made decisions based on local conditions rather than waiting for orders from above. Commander Kate Ross led 3 patrol ships in a daring attack on the alien flagship. Her vessels were completely outgunned, but they used their superior maneuverability to avoid the heavy weapons while targeting sensor arrays and communication equipment. General Vextar found himself fighting a completely different kind of battle. Where Jake had used surprise and creativity to disrupt his plans, the human fleet used coordination and flexibility to overwhelm his defenses. Every time the aliens concentrated fire on one target, the other human ships would strike from unexpected directions. This is madness, Vextar transmitted on an open channel. How do you coordinate without central command? How do you plan attacks without formation leaders? Captain Hayes laughed as his ship rolled through a barrage of alien fire. General, we do not need central command because every human ship is trained to think independently. We plan attacks by trusting each other to do the right thing. The alien commander's frustration was obvious in his voice. Impossible! No military force can function without hierarchy and discipline. You are right, Jake said from the orbital station. No alien military force can function that way, but humans are not aliens. He launched another batch of kinetic projectiles while the human fleet continued its coordinated assault. Commander Ross had managed to disable the sensors on 2 alien ships while pilot Danny Clark led a squadron of fighters in hit-and-run attacks against the enemy formation. Down on the planet's surface, the evacuation was nearing completion. Lisa Park reported that only a few hundred colonists remained in the danger zone, and they would reach the deep shelters within the hour. But the battle in space was far from over. Despite their tactical advantages, the human ships were taking damage from the superior alien weapons. Captain Hayes' ship had lost its main engines, while 2 of the smaller patrol vessels were completely destroyed. Jake, we need to end this soon, Ron Hayes called over the communication channel. We cannot take much more punishment. Jake studied his tactical display and saw that the alien fleet was beginning to regroup despite their losses. General Vexistar was a skilled commander who was learning to adapt to human tactics. Given time, the aliens would find ways to counter the human advantages. I have an idea, Jake said as he began reprogramming the orbital station's power systems. But it will require precise timing and a lot of trust. The station's main reactor was designed to power the electromagnetic accelerators that moved cargo up and down the orbital elevator. But with some modifications, Jake could channel that power into a massive directed energy weapon. It would only work once before burning out the entire system, but once might be enough. What do you need? Captain Hayes asked. I need you to force the alien fleet into a tight formation directly below the station, Jake replied as he worked frantically on the power coupling. Can you do that without getting yourselves killed? Probably not, Hayes admitted, but we will try anyway. The human fleet immediately changed tactics and began herding the alien ships toward the position Jake had specified. It was dangerous. Work that required the ships to expose themselves to enemy fire while maintaining precise formations. Commander Ross led her damaged vessels in a desperate charge that forced 3 alien ships to move closer together. Danny Clark's fighters swarmed around the enemy formation, drawing fire away from the larger ships. Captain Hayes brought his crippled vessel directly into the alien formation, using it as a shield for the other human ships. General Vextar realized too late what the humans were trying to accomplish. All ships scatter immediately, he ordered. Do not let them concentrate our forces. But the Kethvar ships were too large and slow to break formation quickly. They had been designed for overwhelming firepower rather than maneuverability, and that design was now working against them. Jake finished his modifications to the power system and began charging the improvised weapon. The station's reactor output climbed toward dangerous levels as enormous amounts of energy flowed through systems never designed to handle such loads. Ron, you have 30 seconds to get clear, Jake transmitted. After that, anything below the station is going to have a very bad day. The human ships immediately began emergency acceleration away from the target zone. Some of them barely escaped, the area before Jake triggered his weapon. The entire orbital station shuddered as its reactor discharged 20 years' worth of stored energy in a single focused beam. The lance of coherent light struck the center of the alien formation and continued through 4 ships before finally dissipating. When the blinding flash faded, 5 Kethvar vessels had been completely destroyed, while 3 others were crippled and drifting. The remaining alien ships found themselves scattered and disorganized with their command structure in ruins. General Vextar's voice came over the communication channel, sounding shaken and confused. "How is this possible? You had no weapons capable of such destruction." "We did not," Jake admitted, as he watched his improvised weapon system burn out in cascades of sparks. "I just built one." The alien general was silent for a long moment before speaking again. "Human Jake Morris, I request permission to speak with you directly." Jake was surprised by the formal tone and the use of his name. "Permission granted, General. What do you want to discuss?" "I want to understand," Vextar replied. "My species has conquered 47 worlds and enslaved dozens of races. We have never encountered resistance like this. How does one human become so dangerous?" Jake looked down at the planet below where his people were finally safe in their shelters. He thought about the past 12 hours and everything he had learned about himself and his species. "General, I think you are asking the wrong question," he said finally. "The question is not how one human becomes dangerous. The question is why you thought any human would not be dangerous when defending their home." There was another long silence before Vextar spoke again. "I am beginning to understand human. Your species fights differently than any other." "Yes, we do," Jake agreed. "And General, I think it is time for you to leave." The damaged alien flagship approached the orbital station slowly with its weapons powered down. General Vextar had requested a face-to-face meeting with Jake Morris, and the human had agreed. Both commanders knew this conversation would determine whether the battle ended or continued. Jake waited in the station's main docking bay, wearing his patrol uniform and carrying only a sidearm. Around him, the twisted wreckage of his improvised weapons told the story of 12 hours of desperate fighting. The orbital elevator was offline, and half the station's systems had burned out, but New Dakota was still free. The alien shuttle that docked with the station was sleek and elegant compared to human designs. When the airlock opened, General Vextar emerged wearing ceremonial armor that marked him as a high-ranking officer of the Kethvar hegemony. The general was tall even by alien standards, with pale blue skin and 4 arms that ended in delicate hands. His large eyes studied Jake with obvious curiosity, as if trying to understand how such an ordinary-looking being could have caused so much destruction. "Lieutenant Jake Morris," Vextar said in careful English, "I greet you as one warrior to another." "General Vextar," Jake replied with a slight nod, "I wish our meeting could have been under better circumstances." The two commanders walked to the station's observation deck where they could see the scattered remains of the alien fleet. Several ships were still burning, while others drifted helplessly with their crews working to repair critical systems. "You have cost me 11 ships and over 3,000 soldiers," Vextar said without anger. "In 3 centuries of conquest, I have never suffered such losses from a single opponent." Jake looked out at the debris field that had once been Rock 7. "I am sorry for the loss of life, General. But you attacked my home and threatened my people. I could not allow that to stand." "I understand," Vextar replied. "In your position, I would have fought as well. But I do not understand how you fought. Your tactics make no sense according to accepted military doctrine." Jake smiled grimly. "That was the point, General. If I had followed standard doctrine, you would have crushed me in the first hour. I had to do something unexpected." "More than unexpected," Vextar said. "You turned mining equipment into weapons. You used cargo handling systems as artillery. You created an energy weapon from a power reactor. None of this should have been possible. It should not have been possible for anyone else, Jake agreed. But humans think differently than most species. We see possibilities where others see limitations. The alien general was quiet for several minutes as he processed this information. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of respect that had not been there before. Tell me, human, how does your species train soldiers to think this way? Jake considered the question carefully. We do not train them to think any particular way, General. We train them to think for themselves. Every human soldier learns basic tactics and strategy, but they also learn to adapt when those basics fail. But how do you maintain discipline? Vextar asked. How do you coordinate large forces if every soldier makes independent decisions? We coordinate through shared understanding rather than rigid hierarchy, Jake explained. Every human knows the mission objectives and the rules of engagement. Within those parameters, they are free to act as they think best. Vextar shook his head in amazement. Impossible. Military forces require absolute obedience to function effectively. Your military forces require absolute obedience, Jake corrected. Human forces require absolute trust. We trust our soldiers to make good decisions, and they trust their commanders to give them the resources they need. The alien general stared out at the human ships that were regrouping after the battle. Captain Hayes was coordinating rescue operations for the survivors of the destroyed vessels, while Commander Ross organized perimeter patrols. Each ship moved with purpose, but without obvious central control. I can see this trust in action, Vextar admitted. Your fleet operates like a living organism rather than a machine. Each part responds to the whole while maintaining individual initiative. Exactly, Jake said. And that is why you could never have won this battle, General. You came here expecting to fight a machine, but instead you found an organism that adapted to every threat you presented. Vextar turned to face Jake directly. What you describe sounds chaotic and inefficient. How can such a system compete with proper military organization? Jake gestured toward the wreckage of the alien fleet. You tell me, General, which system proved more effective today? The alien commander had no answer for that question. His carefully planned invasion had been shattered by tactics he had never encountered and could barely understand. Everything he thought he knew about warfare had been proven wrong in 12 hours of fighting. There is something else you should know, Jake continued. Dr. Amy Stone has been monitoring your communications throughout the battle. We know about the other fleets attacking human colonies. Vextar stiffened. That information is classified. Not anymore, Jake replied. Amy has already transmitted the fleet positions and tactical assessments to Earth Command. Those colonies are being warned and reinforced as we speak. The implications hit the alien general immediately. If humans could coordinate their defenses across multiple star systems, then the hegemony's strategy of quick, isolated strikes would fail completely. You are saying that our entire invasion plan is compromised, Vextar said slowly. I am saying that attacking humans was a mistake from the beginning, Jake answered. We do not just defend our individual worlds, General. When you attack one human colony, you attack all of humanity. Vextar walked to the observation window and stared out at his ruined fleet. My superiors will demand explanations for this failure. They will want to know how one human defeated an entire battle group. You can tell them the truth, Jake suggested. Or you can tell them something that will prevent future attacks on human settlements. What do you mean? Jake joined the alien general at the window. You can tell them that humans are too dangerous to attack without overwhelming force. You Can recommend that the hegemony find other expansion targets that will not cost so many ships and lives. Vexitar considered this suggestion for several minutes. You are asking me to lie to protect your species. I am asking you to be smart, General, Jake replied. Today you learned that humans fight differently than other species. Tomorrow you might learn that we also make alliances differently than other species. The threat was subtle but clear. If the Kethvar continued attacking human colonies, they might find themselves facing something worse than individual resistance. They might face a coordinated human response that would dwarf anything they had encountered today. I will consider your words, Vexitar said finally. But I cannot guarantee that my government will listen. That is all I can ask, Jake replied. But General, remember this conversation when you write your report. Remember that you faced one human today and nearly lost your entire fleet. Ask yourself what would happen if you faced 100 humans, or 1,000. Vexitar shuddered at the thought. If every human colony could produce defenders like Jake Morris, then the Kethvar war machine would be completely inadequate for conquest. The hegemony would need to rethink its entire expansion strategy. I must return to my ship, the general said. My fleet requires extensive repairs before we can leave this system. Take all the time you need, Jake offered. But General, when you do leave, I suggest you do not come back. Understood, human Jake Morris, Vexitar replied, with what might have been a smile. Perhaps our species will meet again under more peaceful circumstances. I hope so, General, Jake said. But if not, then I hope you remember the lesson you learned here today. After the alien shuttle departed, Jake remained on the observation deck watching the enemy fleet slowly withdraw toward the edge of the system. Captain Hayes joined him there an hour later with a steaming cup of coffee and a tired smile. So what do you think, Ron? Jake asked. Will they be back? Maybe, Hayes replied. But not soon and not with the same assumptions. You changed how they think about humans today, Jake. That might be worth more than any military victory. Jake nodded as he watched the last alien ship disappear into hyperspace. Down on the planet below, 8,000 colonists were beginning to emerge from their shelters to survey the damage and start rebuilding. They would have questions about what happened, and Jake would have to find ways to answer them. But for now, it was enough that they were safe and free. The aliens had learned that humans did not fight like other species, and hopefully they would share that knowledge with others who might be considering similar attacks. As he walked back toward his patrol craft, Jake smiled at the thought of alien military academies studying the Battle of New Dakota. Students would puzzle over his tactics and try to understand how improvisation could defeat superior firepower. Some of them might even learn the most important lesson of all. There was no such thing as just one human.